Can you tell me about your first memories?
Oh, yeah. After I left 17th Street, I went to, we were all, what do you call that? When you're taken away from your family and you go to another place. We call it being farmed out.
Adopted?
Nope, not adopted. We were just sent away because mom may have been pregnant at the time, and they hadn't married. Ray and mom hadn't married yet, and we were sent out. I was sent with John out to the Brahmins, and Gary and Donna. I think Gary went to the Talliers, and Donna went some other place.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah. And so my first memories about the Raymonds were knowing the difference between cream and milk, because you just can't drink it without stirring it up. It's very thick. And also out at the Raymonds, he used to blow stumps up, and he told me to back away from a stump. And he said, you should come back further. And I said, why? Boom! And then after I was done crying, yeah, that was quite an experience. It was very, very emotional at that time, you know. And then that night, John taught me he would never take me to the bathroom, but I could go down the stairs from our room, and I could pee in these pots, and they had flowers in them. And then Mrs. Raymond didn't agree I should do that. She scolded me a little bit. And then my next memories were moving to 518 4th Street in Anacortes still. And that's where I basically grew up for another 10 years, and that's where I met my sister, Darlene. And
So when how old were you when you said you got farmed out?
I would say I was about 4 years old.
Wow. And when you say farmed out, did you go to work?
Oh, no. No, we were just taken to other places to be away from mom because she couldn't afford to feed us. And, oh, I didn't go to the stump farm yet. When mom and dad got married, we were out to Little Cranberry, which is about 4 miles from downtown Anacortes. It had a roof. It had no siding except black paper. And on the inside, we put newspapers up in between the joists to keep us warm. And we had all kinds of things out there. We had our own chickens, and John stepped on mine and killed it. And I learned how to take baths. You get a great big wash tub, and each one of us would get a little bit of hot water on us and a lot of cold water. And we had no running water, no electricity. The roads were terrible. And let's see, that's when Donna and Gary were climbing the rafters in an adjacent building, used to call it a barn, and Donna fell down through the blackberries, into all the blackberries in that particular place. That was pretty emotional. And we basically had a lot of fun out there. We'd get sunburnt, and we'd get towels around us, and we'd be Superman.
And where was this?
This was in the stump farm, we called it.
And where is that, in Montana still?
No, that's still in Anacortes, Washington. And it's outside of town. It's towards a ferry from now. It's 3/4 of the way towards the ferry, and you take a left into the mountains. And the road we had would wash out every year. Somebody would put gravel on it, and it would just sink in. You know. And we had a well there. John fell in the well.
Oh, goodness.
Uh-huh. And he was playing. I'm sorry?
Tell them about the cougar.
Oh, the cougar. Yeah, that's a favorite one. We didn't have a doorknob on our door, and so we just had the hole there for the doorknob. And one night, Mom heard screaming, and she was told by Ray that if you hear the screaming, it's no big deal, it's just a cougar. Just point the gun out, 30-30, out the hole, and fired a couple times. And which she did. What she didn't realize is that she hit the motor of the car that Uncle Mel had. So he didn't have a car either. And it wasn't that long, it's only 5 miles to the show. It cost $0.25 to get in, and we'd have popcorn, a candy bar, and a drink, along with the movie for 25 cents.
Wow.
Yeah, that was something. And we would get $0.25 about once a month. But kids, you know, we just loved everything. That was a great place to live. Sick, no food and stuff.
Other than the abject poverty.
Tell
Yeah.
them how lame your Facebook page was back then.
Hmm?
There was no computers.
All right, so do you remember Montana?
No,
Okay. And so do you know,
No, I was
you
born
don't
in-
remember living with Everett?
no, never lived with Everett, except he took us to Oregon, to Bly, Oregon, 1 year. Us, meaning John and me. John and I. And we spent part of the winter down there. And like I said, I was telling Darlene earlier, the most I remember is being baptized and the fragrance of carnations, because that's what my godmother wore. And I remember walking in very deep snow, going trick-or-treating. And what else did I
Do you remember
remember?
who you were with when you were trick-or-treating, how old you were?
I was 5, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe 5. And I was just with John
Okay.
and some other, I forget the name of the girl Everett was with at that time.
So you and John were,
Ada?
Theodore.
Deidre, yeah, with Deidre. Yeah, and assorted women. And yeah, and then I remember Everett, who's a sheep shearer, would cut our hair. So he'd put a bowl on our head and just about take off his ear.
oh my goodness.
Made it bleed really bad. I was very bad boy for crying at 5. That's all I remember about
Do
Bly.
you need to go out?
Yeah.
Are you going? Okay, go ahead.
But also, Darlene said that
Yeah, hold on just a second, let him go out.
I'm not going to.
Because I hear his coat.
No. Nope. Not
Nope,
going to let him. Nope.
Nope, 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 nope.
My son's going to go have a cigarette, and it's because of me that he's smoking.
I learned it from watching you.
Is it still recording?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Oh yeah, we got it.
Okay.
So, what brothers and sisters do you remember growing up with? Was it just you and John?
No, it was John. I'm sorry. Gary was always first, and then Donna, and then John, and then me. I had 4 of us grew up until I think we figured out I was about 8 years old when Darlene came in. That's your mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and we just grew up with cousins, 100 cousins, all our same ages, you know. Of course, Gary was in the upper echelon. John was he was a year older than me, so we were almost together, and Donna was off by herself, doing things in Twilight Zone.
And then
I
after
love you,
that,
Donna.
where did you go after?
Oh, after that, then Uncle Mel was accused of of a rape of a babysitter, which was untrue. We found out 2 years later, but he went away for a year. So Mom and Ethel, moved in together, but they raised our rate from $30 a month to $33, so we had to move. And so we moved a block away in a great big house. And so the two families lived together with Rod and Faye. Lord Jen wasn't born yet. And we lived there for a year or so. I had a boil on my arm, and Ethel, certified crazy. Mom would heat a milk bottle, and the thing is she'd pull the boil out by putting a hot water bottle on the skin, and it's supposed to pull the boil out. Well, I was crying. I was 7 then, and I was crying, and Ethel came at me with a butcher knife and swung it at my head like this, and she turned it right at the last and just hit me on the head with a flat end, thank God. And I remember that. That was emotional.
Kind of stays with you.
Yeah, yeah. And we saw The Thing that year. And everyone is afraid of that.
All right. So after that, how long till you joined the Navy?
Oh, be 10 years after that. I joined when I was 17. And 3 months before I was 18. And of course, before that, we all picked strawberries every year. I picked the most because I'm the youngest, and it was stupid. And I had the best clothes because that's how we paid for our clothes. You were there then. Yeah, Darlene was there then. Were you a good worker?
Yes, do you remember selling cardboard boxes?
Yeah.
So we could go to the movies?
Yes. We could sell cardboard boxes with Jimmy Laval. And we had thousands of things we could do to make money. And then we just had normal childhood. Gary would sometimes go steal apples to put in our canned milk in the morning for breakfast. I remember that. Because Ray had busted his back one year fishing. Somebody left the hatch open. And he fell down the hole and hit his back on we call it the screw, the metal pipe in a hole. And he broke his back, so everyone gave us all their food from different boats, so we really lived good for a while. And then when the food ran out, we still didn't have any money, and we were still at 518 4th. And then the Salvation Army came to our rescue one Christmas and gave us all Christmas presents because Mom and Dad didn't have any money. And I learned Jacob's Ladder from the Salvation Army, and we all had to go to Salvation Army Church then for, 3 or 4 months, or 3 or 4 weeks, something like that.
That was
Were you
before
were
me.
you you weren't there yet? Oh, yeah, I remember that. I remember winning $7 in pennies, nickels, and dimes at a show because they'd draw tickets. And you could go up and put your hand in a jar, and as much money as you can get out of there, you kept. And I got over $7, and I spent some money on candy, and I came home, and Mom said, well, we need bread, we need butter. And I felt so bad because I spent all that money on myself, but I still had 5 of the $7 left. But it all went for the family. That was fun. Is that it?
No.
We're done.
No, not at all. So we talked about. So you joined the Navy at 17. What did you do in the Navy?
Went to boot camp in Seattle. Took my first flight on a DC-3 at 17. I wasn't even 18 yet. And I thought this is magic. I flew right out of Sandpoint. And we took trips around different places. But I joined the Navy Air at the time, is what it was called. And come June, we graduate high school in May, like late May, so the kids could go fishing and stuff. And then come June, I either had to start paying rent at my house, or I had to go in service. And I said, see ya. And so I went to Midway Island for a year, and I was in flight gear issue after compartment cleaning for 3 months. It was, you either went to compartment cleaning or you had to be in a cook in the Navy. But I was on an island, so it's called sea duty. Because Midway Island is 1,500 miles west of Hawaii. It's right out there where nobody lives. Check the Goonie birds. Yeah, so I basically was doing that flight gear issue. And do you need specifics?
Oh no, we're just wondering like even what you did. I don't think I've even heard of, you know, what you were doing. And
Yeah, the first thing you do is the guys that were from Seattle, we'd all get together and, you know, get drunk and stuff. But they'd take us to these barracks where during World War II, Midway was attacked and show us all the bullet holes. That was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And said, see that bullet hole there? That's from a Japanese nip.
Jeez.
What's a nip?
Doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah. And we flew 24 hours a day on Midway. We had a couple U-2s come through there, and nobody could look at them, right? So that's when everyone got their cameras out to take pictures of the U-2s. And we'd fly the barrier between Midway Island and the Aleutian Chain, and we would detect any Russian communist threats during that time, keep everybody in the United States safe. Yeah, that's what we were told. And so it had to do, everything had to do with Navy Air at that point. You know.
So was there radar in there?
Oh yeah, in the planes they were real spooky planes. They had 4 engines, and then like a Boeing 747, and right in the middle of it was a great big mound, and on that mound had all the electronics in it, and we'd have 5 aloft at a time, 24 hours a day.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah, because that's a long ways, you know,
Yeah.
going all the way up to Alaska and back.
Yeah.
And so in flight gear issue, I issued them coffee, knives, hunting knives, in case it went down. They're gonna, hunt sharks? I don't know. But, you know, they might have made it to land. And anything to do with flying, that's what flight gear issue was. And they make you take lie detector tests to see if you're stealing anything.
Oh, no kidding.
I passed.
Right, so you want some BDUs, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And when did you get out?
A year after that, I was 19, and I went aboard the USS Coral Sea, heavy attack aircraft carrier. And we had a few problems with that. It ran aground in San Francisco Bay, and they changed captains then. And we really did good on the test before you go in. We're part of the 7th Fleet, which is 5 carriers about, and maybe 30 destroyers. And so we would leave San Francisco, or really Oak Harbor, Oakland. And we'd take off and go from Alameda all the way to Hawaii, stop and get drunk there. And then our ship was the first ship to go down to Sydney, Australia. And that was kick-ass. That was really, really cool. Because I took 17 days leave. But I switched from the air division because the air guys all had to be on a flight deck pushing planes around, getting their legs cut off when the wires broke. And some of them, I saw one of my friends walked into a propeller, and I saw his arm and head go off the boat. That was emotional. He just got engaged. 17. Yeah. But anyway, he died for America because we were fighting the communists. And basically is a different place wherever we stopped. Hong Kong, Sydney, Australia, Sasebo, Japan, the Philippines, quite a few ports in Japan. And in October of '64, I think it was, we had just busted all 3 of our landing wires, you know, that catch planes, because we'd gone through a pretty big storm. It took us from Japan to the Solomon Islands. And nature is very good at opening your eyes to things that are dangerous, because I was, from the top of the flight deck to the sea was 70 feet, and the waves were coming over that. It was pretty intense. But we naturally would head into the waves. If we went sideways, we would capsize. And we had a particular time, somebody lit a fire in the armory. And it was on a Sunday, and we were at sea for about 30, 40 days. And I was in Damage Control Central there. And we called the United States. Since it was Sunday, we couldn't get the Chief of Naval Operations to flood the armory, because they thought it would take care of all of our armory and all of our ability to send us 3 million pounds of bombs to Vietnam. And couldn't get a hold of the CNO, and so we had to put it out ourselves, and which we did. Only one person lost his life. He was hit over the head with called a dogging wrench, about that big. And so they said he was a communist and started the fire because he was dead.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow.
I love America.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay.
Yeah, that was a
So
pretty
when did you
interesting
get out?
time. Hmm?
When did you get out?
I
Did
got
you-
out October, November. They flew it. Yeah, when we broke the 3 wires, we came back to Yokohama, and I got off the ship, and they had a recall to the ship. And the shore patrol grabbed me and said, "You're going back to the Coral Sea," because I had it on my arm. And I said, "Nope, here's my papers. I'm out of here." And so I got to spend the night there, and then they flew me mats back to San Francisco. And that was in October, November of 64. 64, not 74. And I learned how to serve beer. Yeah, they said if they smelled beer on my breath, they'd give me a summary court-martial.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow.
So I did that for 3 nights. And a week later, I got my discharge papers, and I took a bus from San Francisco to Anacortes. I was real tan and buff. So ends the story of Tom Plummer.
Knew you were in.
Oh yeah, we first ship. They made all the buses free for anyone who had USS Coral Sea on it.
Uh-huh.
And
So you toured around?
yeah, the first day I was there, I got in a taxi and I said, I got $17. Take me where you can. For $17. And he took me all around Sydney, and I went out someplace called Bondi Bay, and then he took me to his house and we had lunch.
Oh,
Isn't that cool?
yeah.
Yeah. And then I came back to the ship, and the next day I went with my buddy who I taught how to fight. It was funny. And we were walking down the street, and one of the, you'd call them representatives, okay, like a senator,
Oh, yeah.
one of those guys, he promised his wife he'd take 2 Navy boys out to the Victoria, which is like the restaurant in Sydney. You know, I mean, we had oysters and a half shell, and like I'm going, what am I doing here? You know, what am I doing here? And he was just really a nice guy. He paid for everything, and I might have had a beer. And yeah, we just had all kinds of fun. And then on my leave, unfortunately, I went to this museum, and they told about all the spiders in Sydney that would kill you, you know. And so when I stayed at the YMCA that night, I hardly slept at all. I hardly slept at all. And then I went and I met a girl that was doing tickets at the show. But what I found out is I went to see, what's one of our favorite ones? With wood.
Splendor in the Grass.
Splinter and Grass. No. The one that she does the Spanish, the two people, the Jets are against the,
Oh.
you know what it is.
West Side Story.
West Side Story, thank you. Yeah, they had West Side Story. And then, like, 2 days later, they had Elizabeth Taylor, okay? And she was in that really spectacular movie, Cleopatra, okay? The girl that sold me the tickets played, or went up on stage and was Cleopatra before the movie started.
Wow.
So I said, could I date you? And I went and had supper with her, and she wrote me one time, I think. And then I was giving tours of the ship. They called me back because I was in my position in the ship. I knew a lot about the ship, and so I'd give tours. I'd do 3 tours a day, and I met this girl from Sweden. Just happened to, you know, she came up and wanted my autograph or something. Anyway, I went to her house, and they let me sleep there for 2 days or 3 days. And there's no hanky-panky in Sweden, evidently, because I slept out here, and she was in there, and there's iron bars to the bedroom. And yeah, but I just had a great time in Australia. That was just so cool. I would take tours. They gave us like less than half off on tours of They call them the Three Sisters Mountains. And you go down this tram into the valleys. It's very scary. It's like a roller coaster. Man, scare me. But if you're drunk enough, nothing scares you. Yeah, and I learned how to do the can-can. I got in with some college kids, and they taught me how to do the can-can. And then they wanted to fight. The boys wanted to fight Americans. I said, that's cool. I said, one problem, I'm a lover and not a fighter. So I'll go with the girls, and you guys fight. Now watch. I mean, they were serious. They just wanted to fight for no reason. You're not mad or anything. They just, college kids. That's what I remember, other than a couple bars there.
Hey, Meg, you fancy a fist to the face?
Yeah. I learned how to eat in Australia.
Okay, so after the Navy, you went to Anacortes. Is that what you said? After the Navy, you went to Anacortes?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I went to Anacortes. Got unemployment, $25 a week. And then I went to work in what the heck was that logging place? Not logging. They chopped up wood. Sawmill.
Oh.
Not where Gary went. He went to the north end. I was right downtown on 12th Street.
The paper mill?
Yeah, the paper mill. And that's where I had my first introduction to brick. The insides of one of the cookers, which is about 70, 80 feet high. Well, I got on because either one or two guys were killed in there. At the bottom, they were trying to put these lines in the brick, to keep them stable. Well, evidently they fell.
Right.
And fell on these guys down at the bottom. And so I mixed mud for them and stuff. And then they said, you want to go in? And I said, yeah, I really do, but I have a headache. Not me. Yeah, and then I learned Kennedy was killed at that time. I was sweeping out one of those conveyor belts that takes the chips up and down. And then you got to sweep all the insides. And that's the day Kennedy was killed. Yeah. And I also did some work excavating stuff in Anacortes. We had to put new pipes underneath docks. And who's going to take the thing? So I got real dirty then. And
did you always, like when you started brick, did you like it? Did you like
I loved
building it?
Yeah, I loved it. But that was way in the future. That was after, where are we at now?
So you're out of the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
You started working at the paper mill,
Mm-hmm.
and where did you go from there?
Oh, then Gary Plummer and the Pacific 3 was the next place. He was living in projects here in Seattle. And I came down and lived with him. I learned how to do drywall, carry drywall. See how long this arm is? That stuff is heavy. Oh my God. I worked at that and I did a few other things, and at night we'd play pinochle with Uncle Wilmer, who lived in the projects with us, right across from our house. And before the night was over, him and Gary were fist fighting. Every night had something to do with him bringing over a pint of whiskey. That's all it took with that guy. It's unreal.
Was Gary with Mary Ann?
Yeah. Gary was still with Mary Ann, and we only had Vicky, Beth, and Debbie Sue then. No Mike or Melinda yet. And we went to Alaska fishing, and we went to southeast Alaska, they call it. We didn't go further north than Juneau. and that was real good grounds. I learned a lot about fishing and a lot about life there. Catch a can.
Mhm.
Yeah, it
How'd you
was.
wind up back in California?
We hired a guy in Seattle sleeping under the docks named Don Terrell. Don Terrell, yeah. And he was a cowboy. And so he became a deckhand. You know, when they pulled the nets over the block. And he was a deckhand. I was a skiff man then. And when we got through fishing, I had my car just broke down on the way to California because I was going to take Dawn back to California. There was nothing here for me. You know, that Kay Welk girl that I was in love with, she married another guy when I was on a carrier. Isn't that nice of her? And so I said I'd never get married. And I made a pact with a guy on a Coral Sea. We wrote down 27 attributes of the woman we were going to marry. And there she is right there. And so anyway, we took Don down there, and I became a cowboy until we went into roping Brahma bulls. You do is, they're running towards you. One guy's way down there, and he's running the Brahma bulls this way. I go for the smallest Brahma bull there ever was. And you lasso it, and you duck under the rope and hold the rope on a tree to get that bull to flip, and then the other guys would tie it up. I didn't duck under it. Right across here. Yeah, so that was my bull riding days. And the month that I met Sandy, they had the only horse that ever lived to be 50 years old. What was her name? Sally or something? Huh? Dolly. Yeah, Dolly. Yeah, I met Sandy, and I was going to show her what a great cowboy I was. And I got on Dolly, and I was riding down, and I didn't know that you're like supposed to warm up the horse before you do anything. They want to take their time to do
We hadn't
shit.
met yet.
Huh?
We had not met yet.
I thought, yeah, that was you.
Took me to see the horse?
Huh?
Took me to see the horse?
No. And I went over the head of the horse.
Yeah, you told me about that, but I don't remember seeing that.
Oh, that wasn't Sandy. Yeah, I thought I impressed Sandy. Yeah, I love you. Yeah, and so it wasn't Sandy, but anyway, I showed this other, I think it was my aunt, how I could ride a horse, and I went right over the head of that 80-year-old horse. I'm telling you, God, that was something. Showed her what a cowboy I was, by God. Yeah. We're coming real close to Sandy, though.
Yeah, we are. So that's the next one. So when did you meet Sandy?
We met. I'd like to let Sandy say how we met. She says it's so cool.
Okay. All right. So you weren't still in the Navy. So you were out for
Yeah,
how long?
yeah, I was
A couple years maybe?
2 years probably. We got married in '66. That was like 65. Yeah, because I just got to California.
And
Yeah.
so is that where you guys met?
Yeah.
In California?
Yeah, she was in a convent, and I took her out of that. I beat God. I beat God out of that one. Well, wasn't it called a convent?
Oh,
What was the name of the school?
Rosemead High School.
No, it wasn't. What was the one before that?
Ramona Condon.
It was a great school, I think. Am I still in view?
Yeah.
Because I got to change my legs.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. All right.
I begun.
Okay, so so you met Sandy,
Mhm.
and how in the world did you get her to marry you?
I asked her, we met in December the 10th, the 10th of December in 65, I guess. No, it must have been 64. He got married in 66. Yeah, 10th of December in 64. And I didn't ask you for at least a day, maybe 2 days. Very soon I asked her, and she said no. And she said no for the next 4 or 5 or 6 months. And I got notice from the Navy, you're now on the USS DD Whitehurst out of Seattle, because that's where I was training.
Oh,
And I was the gunner. That would be cool. Anyway, they said they'd like me to please report for duty because I was going to Vietnam again. And I wrote him back and I said, no, I'm in a non-pay, non-drill status. And if you want me, come and get me, sucker. I'm at 707 Anacortes. And I was in Pomona, California at the time. And they never caught me. And the next thing I heard from the Navy is after 8 years, I got an honorable discharge.
I'll be damned.
And I sweated it after I got that notice, I'm telling you. I had a drink over that. I remember sitting there, it was one drink and one drink only. Every night.
So you
Till
guys
closing.
you guys got married in California?
Yeah, we got married
and how
on,
long did you guys live there?
we lived there about 3 years.
I was born and raised there.
No, how long did we
Yeah,
live
you
there?
guys lived there.
Us two. We bought a house. Mark wasn't
so
2
was
years
Mark
old,
born
was he?
Yeah, he was about 14 months old when we left.
Okay.
So,
So he was born a year and 9 months after we were married.
Gotcha. And then how much longer till Christy?
Till Christy?
Yeah.
That was, she was,
Colorado.
yeah, she was born in Colorado.
She's a little, about 3.5 years younger than Mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how did you guys end up getting to Colorado?
I was working for, after I worked for the Progress when I met Sandy, which is a great big newspaper in Pomona, California. I would distribute the papers, and we got married, and she was working, and I was working, and we couldn't even like pay rent. So I got another job at Pomona Tile, which was in Anaheim, which is 30 miles away, about 30 miles away. And her mother had cancer, and we moved in with her, but she insisted that the house be in our name. So we didn't use any of her utensils or anything. We put all of her stuff into the garage and took all of our wedding presents and to decorate the house and everything. And so she would be living with us and we wouldn't be living with her. It was that kind of thing. She is a saint. She really is. Frances Soik. I never did meet Sandy's dad because he passed in October, and I met her in December. It was that close. Had we met, I doubt if we'd be married today, because I was drinking. Sandy's mom said, since I've known Tom, he's not gone one day without a beer. And so her dad had passed, and the rest is history, but Sandy has a really cool way of saying how we met.
All right. Okay, so we're just basically wrapping it up. We got all our stuff answered except for the last.
Oh, how we got to Denver?
last little bit. Well, yeah, how you
Yeah.
went to Colorado and then
Yeah.
kind of fast forward to here.
Oh,
and
cool.
How you ended up getting here.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so I went with this Pomona Tile Company, and they were bought out by a bigger tile company, and I didn't know what my place in Pomona Tile was going to be, and another company right next to me about was Quality Marble and Granite Company, and they hired me to be their
Regional sales manager.
well, first they hired me to be their okay, it's very easy. It's distribution, warehouse manager, and part-time inside sales.
Sure.
And then the person that was in Denver lost his retired, and they sent one of the people in because California was their home base, Quality Marble and Granite Company. The person he sent was a perfect fit for that salesman's job, but his wife would get nosebleeds because of the altitude. Denver, mile high. And so they said, who else? Who's really dumb that would take this job? And so they took me, and so Sandy's mom had passed from leukemia, and nothing really holding us in California except all of her family. My family was up in Washington in ADAC. And so we headed out to Denver. And then the IRS, after I quit that job at Quality Marble and Granite, I went into my own business and became a union tile setter. And I ran my own business, Tom Plummer and Son Tile Company. And the IRS decided I wasn't paying enough taxes. They took my house and all the good memories I had there. And so Sandy and I went to Anacortes. And from Anacortes, we came here, leaving a few things out.
Sure. And then you've been here for
36 years, yeah.
36 years.
Mm-hmm. In this house.
Yeah.
And we were in 2 other houses in the Seattle area for a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. I'm done.
Okay. I got one more for you.
Oh,
It's one more and a little bit expanding on it.
okay.
Did you always have faith?
No. I found faith when I was in the Navy. When this guy I was training to fight, okay, I was humbled enough that I couldn't take it anymore, and there was no place to go. And so I said, like when I was drinking, I used to say, God, if you could get me out of this ticket, I'll go to Sunday school and all this. And basically the same type of thing happened in the Navy, where I was humbled a lot. And God said, hey, you ready yet? Hey, you ready yet, sucker? And then I met Sandy after the Navy, and that just cemented it for me, I mean, that was a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And how did you guys end up playing music in church?
Oh, Sandy knew I played guitar. She joined the choir. And about a year, 2 years later,
No, not even that long yet, I think.
yeah, she got me to start playing in a choir. And I fought it, and then she had me playing for the little kids before I went into the choir. And I hated it, it's too much, it's just too much. And I loved every minute once I got to church. I loved it so much. Those little kids coming up and hugging me on the leg and saying, Mr. Music, And we had the best folk group choir in the Catholic Church. We had 17 of us at one time, I think. And we just really, we became a family. You know, we had 1,000 practices here. You know, we'd practice 3 times a week for Christmas and Easter, and then once a week. And we usually practice right here. And then I'd met other people, you know, wives or somebody who heard about us, and we'd just play, have guitar fun in the other room. And it was really a lot of fun. And nobody drank. It was really crazy. You know, I'm going, what's wrong with these people? What's wrong with these people? But yeah, did that help?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. Mama, was there anything else? I got all my questions.
Yeah, I think I did too.
All right. It's a wrap.
And Sandy.
All right. So where were you born?
I was born at St. Vincent's Hospital in Los Angeles, California.
Okay, and tell me about your mom and dad.
My mom and dad. Well, let me think here. My dad was 11 years older than my mom. He met her when she was, I think, 17. And he fell madly in love with her. And she said he lived in, I'm not sure where he lived. I know she was in Ohio. And he, I think, lived in California. And she said, if you want to marry me, you're just going to have to come and get me, knowing that he didn't have a car. But he borrowed a car, and he drove and got her and married her. Her mom and dad they stood up for them. They were married by a justice of the peace. And her mom and dad were her witnesses. And she said her dad cried when she got married. And then they started their life together. And mother was not a Catholic when they got married, and my dad was. And when she got pregnant for my sister, she realized there was some things that happened in her life with her friends, and she realized that she wanted to be as close to her kids as she could be, and so she wanted to join the Catholic Church so that we could all pray together as one faith, in one faith. And so she studied and became a Catholic, and I don't know, they were married for 39 years before my dad passed away.
Okay.
So-
Well, how did they meet if she lived in Ohio and he
You know,
lived in
I honestly
California?
don't know. I
Uh-huh.
don't know. I don't know how it all worked.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I just know that they did, and that's where she lived. And she said, if you want to marry me, you're going to have to come and get me, and he did.
Huh.
He borrowed a car and got her.
That is a
Borrowed
cool
a car and
story.
got her. But I don't exactly know.
Yeah.
My sister might know more about it, but I
Yeah.
don't know
That's
more
cool.
than that.
And brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister who is 11 years older than I am, and I have an older brother who is 10 years older than I am. And then they waited 10 years, and I came along as a surprise. And then my younger brother David was a big surprise after me. And my mother had been told by a doctor that she could never get pregnant again after my brother, and she was just heartsick. And she then discovered she was pregnant for me and was so happy. She said she used to she had my crib set up long before I was born, and she put a doll in it, and she would just sit and wait for me to come. And she prayed that I would have a love of music, and we were just very, very close.
Wow.
Yeah, we're very close.
That's
So,
neat.
yeah.
Neat. So what kind of jobs have you had in your life?
Wow, what did I do? Well, let's see. The first job I had, I think I worked as a sales associate at Silverwoods in Los Angeles, and I got it when I was 15. Well, besides babysitting, I did that. I think I was 15. I had to get a work permit, and after school, I would catch the bus. After school, I'd walk down to Valley, and I'd catch the bus, and I'd ride it all the way into Los Angeles to the bus depot, and then I'd walk 2 blocks to the department store, and I did that. And then after that, where did I go? I worked at AT&T in Montebello, California. I worked there. And after that, I got a job at the Bond. No, General Dynamics. I got the job at General Dynamics. And I met Tom when I was working at General Dynamics. And after that, I went to work for Macy's. The Bond.
In Colorado.
Here, because I don't, oh, well, I guess there were other jobs along the way. There were little jobs along the way. But anyway, yeah. Is that good?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
36 years at the Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when did you meet Tommy?
I met Tom, like he said, I think 2 months after my dad passed away. My mom and I were out looking for a tree for Christmas, because Christmas was one of her favorite times of year. And I had seen this big, huge white tree because I had to go back and forth on that street, and I saw it over there in the tree lot, and I thought, so anyway, we went and looked at it, and it was like $34, which was a lot of money back then, a lot of money. And my mother was just really wrestling with that idea, and I said, I'll help pay for it. I'll pay half of it. I'm working, I can pay for half of it. And the salesman was trying to get my mom to buy the tree, and he said, is your daughter married? And my mother said, no, she's still looking. And the guy says, well, I'll tell you what. He says, this might be her last year at home for Christmas. There's Tom over there. He's tall, dark, and handsome. If you buy this tree, I'll throw him in with it. And I looked at Tom, and I said, we'll take it. And so he delivered my tree on a Sunday and asked me out before he left. And a year later, we got married.
You smooth devil, you. Wow.
2 months
How
after she
cool
said
is
no.
that?
Yeah. She said no 50 times.
And
I
you
did.
delivered the tree. Oh, I'm gonna need your address, young lady.
Yes, we did deliver the tree.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah. So
And then when did you guys get married?
we got married on January 22nd, 19-something, 52 years ago. Was it 19?
66.
Nah, 60?
66.
66, okay. 52 years ago, yeah.
All right. So do you want to tell me about your family? So
My-
you talked about your mom and dad. So talk about your kids and grandkids.
My kids and grandkids? My kids?
Mhm.
Mark and Christy?
Yeah.
Well, Mark came along, and when I got pregnant for him, I was working for General Dynamics, and I worked until I was 8 months pregnant, because back then you had to stop then. That was the longest you could work, and you had to quit. Yeah, you had to quit. And so I quit at 8 months, and I was my plan then it put into my head that a mom worked until she had her kids, and then she didn't work. She stayed home and was a stay-at-home mom, like my mother was. And anyway, I stayed home for about, I don't know how long. It was a long time before I went back to work, actually, because we had Mark, and then my mom, we moved back in with my mom because she was so sick, and she absolutely adored Mark. She just thought that she used to say, girls are my favorite babies, but she says, I really love Mark. I think I love him the most. And so anyway, she took care of him and me. She was really, really sick, and I had a really hard delivery with Mark and was in bed for like 2 weeks. And she used to bring him to me, and she took care of me, and she did the laundry, and used to watch her give him a bath, because I was a little bit afraid to do that. And so I would sit, and she said, I think it's time for you to do this yourself. I said, really? But she was there always cheering me on, and she took care of me, and she loved Mark to death. And I think he was 14 months old when she passed away. And then we moved to Colorado, and we decided to have a second child, and Christy came along, and she was ready to go. Mark was this beautiful little sweet baby that just could entertain himself and play with a pencil, pretend it was a rocket ship, and his imagination was incredible. And Christy came along going, okay, here I am, entertain me, give me something to do, Totally different. But Mark absolutely adored her, and I don't know, she was my, I don't know, they grew up.
Okay.
They grew up.
Good.
Now Mark's 50.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now Mark's 50,
Is he?
and Christy is,
Jeez.
and Christy is 48.
Oh my God.
48?
In December.
47, yeah. She
In
was,
December, she'll be 48.
okay, so she was 47 this year, yeah, 47. Yeah, and so, and then Christy gave us a beautiful grandson, Jacob, who is 16, and I don't know, it's all good,
Oh, good.
it's all good.
Didn't have any problems for 53 years.
Yeah, right. I know
we
that's
had
right.
we had a few, but we'll skip over those.
All right. So do me a favor. Just say something positive about all three of them. So
All three of-
yeah.
about
so
Christy.
Mark was like you talk a little bit about Mark. You didn't say much about Christy. You didn't say much about Jake.
Okay, well,
So just like a little something, a little story,
Little-
a little something.
a little
each of
story
them.
about Mark.
There's plenty about me. Don't worry about Christy.
Christy.
Well, how about when he first picked up the guitar? Did he?
He really almost, he kind of, his dad encouraged him, I think, to pick up the guitar, and I think it was a little too soon, or it was done in the wrong kind of way,
The ladder.
and Mark told me that that was almost it for him, that he never picked it up, that he almost stopped there, but he didn't, because he too had a gift of music and a love for it, and he's remarkable. I mean, he thrills me all the time. He pleases me. He brings me joy with his music. He does, yeah.
And then Christy, she was a really good athlete.
She was a good athlete. Christy was a challenge. She was a challenge. I learned lots of stuff from Christy, and I used to wonder why God sent me such a strong-willed child, but it was to teach me and to help me grow. And she's a beautiful young woman, and I love her to death, and she's a good daughter and a good mom. She's the best. Wouldn't have changed. I might have changed a few things. I might have changed a few things,
And that's
but
okay.
but
We
you know-
talked about my brothers and sisters on the way up, and we'd like to change a couple things. So
might have changed a few things, but you know what? You don't. If it's not tough, you don't grow. You know, and so
And she's just got such a wonderful heart.
she does. She's
She
got a beautiful
really
heart.
does.
She's a good girl. She really is. We're very close, and I'm very grateful for that.
And then tell me about Jake.
And Jacob was just the light of our lives when he came into the world. He just happy and sweet, and just brought so much joy. And he's growing in such a sweet young man. He really is. They come on Monday nights, either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. They come every week for dinner, and Jake is always with them and seems to be eager to come, and learning to drive. And he made me this cute little reindeer for Christmas. He's taking metal shop this year or last year, and so he made me this cute little reindeer, which was really cute. And
Cool.
he likes to watch all kinds of stuff on TV that I'm not a fan of. But he told me that last week he'd like to study forensic science. And I said, that's really cool. You better study really hard. So that's a good goal.
That's a wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll see how far that goes.
All right. And then our last thing is, what role does faith play in your life?
Oh, it's just it's a huge part of who I am and what I am. And I remember as a little girl, I learned a lot from my mom. I remember seeing my mom and dad both on their knees at night before they crawled into bed, on each side of the bed, you know. My dad wasn't real verbal about it, but he was he went to Mass with us every Sunday, and like I said, I saw him on his knees pray every night, you know, and my mother was always on her knees praying, and I remember praying as a very young girl for the man that I would eventually marry, even though I didn't know who it was. I prayed my grandmother stayed with us, and we shared a room, and she would say her prayers every night, and then I would say my prayers every night, and I remember praying for a man that I could love more than myself, and that would love me more than himself, and that's who God sent me. you know.
Yeah.
That's who God sent me. And even though Tom says after I said no 6 times, it was such a huge step for me, that marriage, you know, taking that's forever. For me, it was forever. And I would get scared and I'd say, no, I can't. And then he'd come back the next day and I'd say, okay, I'll marry you. And then I'd say, no, I can't. Changed my mind, and he was going crazy. But then I realized, you know, look, think about what you prayed for, you know, and here it is, check, check, check. So faith has played a huge part in my life. It still does. It still does. It's gotten us through tremendous trials and difficulties, and I don't know, a lot to be thankful for.
Do we do a take 1 and a take 2 and stuff? Hi, Mrs. Plummer. I believe in James Brown. Can I act?
Do you ever not?
Is a microphone on yet?
It is.
Oh, oops.
Uh-oh.